The intention of this video is to just go through some basic SmartBoard skills and things you might want to know. If you're super familiar with the SmartBoard and know what you're doing, feel free to skip the video and just go on to the lessons. If you're not as familiar, this is definitely something that you will want to know about. So first of all, you can type anything you want in a SmartBoard document. So I can just put my mouse wherever I want and start typing. I can make the text bigger and smaller just by dragging. Works a lot like Word, if you're familiar with it, or any of its various counterparts, Google Docs or anything. You can change your type of font, change the size here. A lot of times I find it's easiest to just drag around, and if I need to make something bigger or smaller, rather than trying to mess with the font size. So that's just typing in your Google document. Now, obviously, I'm not going to want to put everything on the same page. So I have a couple ways to add a new page. One of them is up here in the corner, and you see the little page with the green plus sign on it. That's your add page icon. And note that if you hover over it and just kind of leave your mouse there and don't move it, it'll tell you what that button will do. So I can click on that add page icon, and now I've got a blank new page. And on that page, I can do a lot of cool things. Now notice over here, I've got a lot of what looks like shapes and figures going on here. So I'm going to click on the first shape icon, and note that pops up a whole bunch of different shapes. I've got a circle, got something that looks like a square but isn't quite a square. I've got a rectangle, a triangle, looks like an oval. That might actually be my square, a triangle, a semicircle, a star. And note that here I've got some other shapes as well. If you click on that little arrow, I can get a rectangle, I can get this semicircle, I can get a square. And note that, yeah, it is a square. It's actually holding its shape just like a square would. It would have 4 90-degree angles. I can change the properties of these shapes. So one of my favorite things to do, let's say I'm putting together a SmartBoard document for my students, and I've got the answer to problem number 1, and let's say the answer is 50. One thing that I like to do is I'll put a rectangle over top of it. I'll fill in that rectangle. You see this little paint can up here? That's my fill icon, and I can fill it blue. And hopefully it'll do that for me. And now that answer is hidden. So when we're going over the homework or maybe an example problem in class, we get to answer question number 1. I'll call on a student. That student will respond, give me an answer, and I can move that square away, and we can actually see the answer. So that's one way to go about using these shapes. Especially, I teach geometry, so I use these shapes all the time. If we're going to draw out a figure, it's a whole lot easier for me to start with something that already looks like a square, if we're going to draw a square, or something that looks like a rectangle if we're going to draw a rectangle. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add another new page here, because we've got this other icon here right next to the square and circle, and it's got, looks like a hexagon and a pentagon, and note we've got now shapes with just numbers, and those numbers are telling us how many sides the shape's going to have, and it goes all the way up to 16, and these are actually regular figures, regular polygons. So I chose to do a 5-sided shape, which is called a pentagon, and this is an actual regular pentagon. All of the sides are congruent, and all of the angles are congruent. That is super nice. Again, if you're in geometry and you've got to draw something that you know is going to be a regular figure, or even you need an 8-sided shape to draw something, an octagon, a lot easier than trying to stand up there while all the kids are waiting on you to draw out an octagon. As well, I'm going to add another new page, and I'm going to click back here on my little arrow tool so I can add whatever I want. And I'm going to use this line option here, and I can do all sorts of lines. So there's a line. Ooh, this time I'm going to have a ray. I can have a dotted ray, etc. Now, let's say we start with this line segment and we decided we want it to be something different. one way I can change that is by clicking on this button here. So I can change the thickness of the line, I can change its style, so I can make it dotted, etc. I can change how it starts, I can change how it ends. So now instead of having a line segment, I've got a line, and it's a nice thick line. That's kind of nice for when you're talking maybe parallel lines or diagonals and a polygon. Again, super helpful. Now let's say I want to go back to my previous page. All I have to do is hit this arrow button over here. Another way I can also do that, say if I have a lot of pages and I want to go all the way back to the first one, I can use this button over here. It kind of displays all the pages that you have. So on one of my documents where I have, 100 or 120 pages, if I have a whole chapter's worth of materials, super important to be able to go and just slide through things pretty quick. So that was your basic on shapes. Now, let's say I want to insert some symbols, okay? Those funky symbols. So let's say I'm going to start with a triangle here. And I'm going to need to say that the side of this triangle, and I want it to be the square root of 3, okay? Well, if you notice up here, with all of our text options, there's this A, and it says more text options. If you click on that, we've got some options here. So note that there's the little square root of x. I bet that's what we need. And right there, we've got a whole nother box with a whole bunch of options. So we've got infinity, division, summation, pi, plus or minus, minus plus, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. There's our square root symbol. Now, you have to double click or click on it once and then click insert in order to actually get it to insert. And the only issue I have with this opposed to using Word is you notice it doesn't put over top the little bar. And that drives me and sometimes my students a little crazy, so I a lot of times will go back in and either draw in or use my line segments to put in those bars over the top. So you noticed as well when we were typing there, so let's say I want to say the area equals, and I'm going to leave a blank because I'm going to want the students to find that for whatever reason. I can say centimeters, and I can give them the squared symbol. I can also, if you're a science teacher, notice that there's the superscript, or the subscript, we've got the superscript, you've got all your math symbols. You can change the direction of the text if you're doing like some sort of table. You got your bullets, your numbered systems, increasing and decreasing your indents, strike through, all of those options, just like if you were in a Word document. Symbols wise, over here in this math box, those are the most basic ones that you're going to use. Maybe occasionally an arrow or something like that. Some set notation, your integrals. And then here are all of your Greek letters that you may or may not need to use. Now, perhaps the most important tool that I use most often is right up here next to the clipboard icon with the little camera. That's my screen capture. Now, why is that so important? Because I can do this. If I click on that button, another little box pops up. And it's got these 4 options. The first one here is just a plain capture. If I click on that, I can go into any document I want, any PDF, anything I can pull up on the internet, a picture, anything that you can show on your computer, you can use this with. And if I click on that, this first option, all it does is make it so I can draw any box I want, any rectangle. It'll make that nice camera shutter sound, and it will pull that right in to my document. Okay, so I now just took anything I have. So I do this all the time with my homework. My textbook is in a PDF form. So rather than me reading off the answers to homework, what I do is take a screenshot of my teacher textbook that has all of the answers in it. I put it up on the SmartBoard, and we spend the beginning of class a couple minutes going through the answers to those homework problems, And any problem the students have a question about, they get to ask about, rather than me reading off the answers. A big time waste of time. Big time saver as well. Think about it. Any worksheet that you do, if you can find it online, as long as it's not in a printed format only, and even then there's ways to work around that, you can show it up on your SmartBoard. Now, note that there's options here that say capture to new page, and I've got that box checked. So let's go back here, and let's say I just want to capture just this little algebra tile down here that we're going to talk about later this week. And it'll show up on the same page. Now, I wasn't very nice when I copied it, so that's why it's got that little line through it, but that's easy to fix. I can go back and recopy it. I can delete it. I can click on the little arrow there and click delete, or I can just click on the icon and then click delete on my keyboard. Now, let's talk about what the other 3 buttons do. So, this one here, if I click on it, it's going to say, what window would you like me to take a picture of? So it will literally take a picture of your entire window. So in that case, it was the whole available Chrome, Google Chrome window. I could do, a list of documents, something like that as well. And again, I can set that up to capture to a new page or be the original page. Okay, this one is going to capture the whole display, so the entire screen that you can see here. And that's going to put it on a new page for me. That's nice maybe if you're going to leave directions for someone, maybe a teacher, you're going to have a substitute for the day, and you need to leave directions for them for how to do something on your SmartBoard. Super easy for you to use this to help write those directions. And the last one is also really nice. Okay, you notice it's got like the funky looking shape. What it is saying is, hey, you can take and only copy whatever you want. I use this a lot of times if maybe I have an example problem from my textbook I want to show up on the SmartBoard. And we all know that after our example problems a lot of times comes the answer. So maybe I have an example problem and a solution, but I only want to show the example problem. Maybe there's a drawing in with the answer that I want the students to be able to see when I have the problem. So maybe that's how I'll get that in there. And note that it copied exactly like that. It's not as nice and neat as the rectangle tool, but it still works. Again, these are just a few of the basic things I think you should be aware of. And I'm going to have you use this week when you submit your assignments, especially for the algebra tiles. Now, if you don't have a SmartBoard at your school, or you don't have a SmartBoard file installed on your computer at home or wherever you're at so that you can take a screenshot, there's a couple other ways to do that. If you're on a Windows 7 computer, and I'm assuming Windows 8 also has this, if you go to your little start button and you see there's a snipping tool there, if it's not listed, you can type it in and it'll come up. I use mine a lot, so it's already there. And it'll pop up, and just pretty much like what we had, you can do a freeform, a rectangular, a window, or a full screen snip, and it will save that as a document. You can then copy that, put it in a Word document, and submit your work to me that way. And I'll ask you to save your changes. The other option here is if you're using Google Chrome, which should work on any type of device, you can download this little add-in here called Nimbus Screenshot. It is NIMBUS, Nimbus Screenshot, and install that into your Google Chrome, and it will let you, if I use it here, it'll come up, visible part of the page, selected area. So I'm going to say, just like we have been doing, let's take some selected area. There we go. And it's going to say, do you want to save it? Do you want to edit it? Do you want to cancel? So I'll just save it. And it's going to download it for me there. And then I can, again, take that and insert it into a Word document if I need to, and then cancel out of that particular document. So hopefully that'll give you enough of the basics of SmartBoard for what we're going to need this week. Good luck. If you have any questions or any problems at all, don't hesitate to send me an email, and I will get back to you.